Hi guys. Okay, so today we are talking about microcontrollers, embedded systems, and microprocessors. And the reason I like to teach you about these things is because they're everywhere in your world, everywhere. And as you grow up, they're just going to be more and more of them. They are literally everywhere. Even if you just think about around your house where you are right now, how many of these microcontrollers, embedded systems, and microprocessors are in your laptop, in your phone, in your TV if you've got a newish TV, in your DSTV decoder if you've got one of those, in your internet router, your router for the internet, inside the fiber optic transceiver. If you've got fiber to your house, then you've got like a little box that connects into your router. There's going to be one in there. Your microwave oven. Um, they're everywhere. Okay, so they're ubiquitous. Ubiquitous meaning everywhere in your world. Okay, so it's important to kind of know what they are and a little bit about how they work. Okay, so a microprocessor. Okay, so we'll talk about the different types here and what they do. So a microprocessor is a processing chip, right? So it's just a processor that's got a CPU, okay, a central processing unit inside of it. Think of it as being like a little brain. And some of them nowadays have multiple cores in them. Okay, so like for example, my laptop that I've got here has got eight CPUs in it, and I'm sure yours, if it's relatively new, has probably got more than one. And they are normally built for going into. They're quite generic. They're used in quite a few cases. They do sort of general computing, and you normally find them inside PCs and laptops. But what makes it a microprocessor is the fact that it does not have any other sort of hardware built into it. It's got no long-term memory. It can't store anything. They've usually got a little bit of RAM, but just enough to do their job. Okay, and if you switch them off, they lose it all. So it's what they call volatile memory. It doesn't store it. And this here is an example of one. Okay, this is a CPU from inside of a computer. It's kind of the main brain. It's the thing that you would see the big fan on top of it. I wish I could show it to you. We have some in the class, and when we get back to class, I will show these to you. Okay, so this one here comes out of a desktop PC. So you can think of it as being a brain with no body. Okay, if you want to think of it in terms of the human aspect, it's a brain with no body. Okay, it can do calculations, but it needs supporting hardware to be put with it for it to do anything useful. And they will go onto a motherboard that gives it all of those extra things that it needs. Okay, there's a few examples of them there. You'll see here there's an Intel i5 and an i7. Intel is a manufacturer of these chips. AMD is another manufacturer of them, and they are now making these Ryzen chips, Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 7. Qualcomm is another company that makes them. And this Snapdragon here is probably what's in your cell phone. Qualcomm make chips for cell phones, as does ARM. Okay, that's the company ARM. They make technology that builds these chips, also predominantly for cell phones and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's a microprocessor. Okay, so let's have a look at a microcontroller. So a microcontroller is a little bit different from a microprocessor. Okay, it's also got a CPU in it, and here's one here. I've put this red circle around it here, and this little thing here is called a microbit. Okay, so when we eventually do practical for our technology course, yeah, these are those little boards that you will be using to do your prac with. And there I've put the red circle around the microcontroller. Okay, so that microcontroller, it has a microprocessor inside of it. Okay, it's got a CPU inside of it, but also inside of it, it's got some other stuff. Okay, the software, or let's say the firmware, because it's not quite software, and the firmware that is used to run this board is also buried inside there. Okay, so there's a bit more intelligence inside. It's not just for calculation. It has some ROM inside of it, some storage, and some RAM. And it's got I/O. It's got input and output ports on it as well. So it's a bit more than just a microprocessor. Okay, it's a microcontroller, and that's one there with the red circle around it. Here is also another special type of microcontroller. This one here that I'm running my mouse around is used to control the USB connection on this board. So it's used to handle all the incoming data this little chip uses, and then it sends it across to the main microcontroller where it is used, the processor there. Okay, and microcontrollers, like I showed you there, they're a little bit less generalized. It's not like a computer. Okay, it's not like your laptop that can do sort of general things. Microcontrollers are normally built for a bit more of a specific task. And then lastly, we come to embedded systems. So embedded systems is, if you look at the whole of this, okay, so this whole thing, the whole microbit, okay, that there is a microcontroller, but the whole thing, everything, all the power on it, and the USB controller, and the access to the ports at the bottom here, and you can see there we've got a compass over there, we've got an accelerometer over there, so we've got those sensors built onto it, we've got a little LED over here. All of those all together make up an embedded system. Okay, and here's another example of an embedded system here in the blue. This is called an Arduino. It's very much like the microbit. It's a very commonly used board to teach electronics and hobby electronics. And you can see here, this chip over here is the microprocessor over there, or the microcontroller. Okay, it's an 8-bit microcontroller. And then along here are all the ways you can access it. The ports all come along there. Here's your USB. There's the USB controller over there. So this little thing here is an embedded system. This embedded system is, you can often use it for robotics and all sorts of things. Now, an embedded system, that is what you would usually find inside your ADSL router or your Wi-Fi router or your DSTV decoder or your dad's car. Or overhead projectors like in the classroom, anything that's got that's built to do a task, like your mum's microwave oven, for example. It does one job, and that's to heat up food. That's all it does. Okay, so it doesn't run an operating system. It's got no windows on it or anything like that. It just heats up food. It knows if the door is closed. It knows if you've put the timer on, because it runs the timer, and it can turn the microwaves on and off to cook the food, and that's all it does. It just cooks food. So that's what its job is, and it does its job very well. It has one job to do, and it does it very, very well. So that is the difference between the microcontrollers and the CPUs and the embedded systems. Okay, so just read this in conjunction with lesson 4 in the book, and you will be good to go.